everyone. My guest today, Michelle Holloway. She's an occupational therapist, founder, and owner of Lifestyle Transitions PLLC, servicing Dallas and Fort Worth area. So the company was founded in 2021, specializes in promoting safe aging and independence for community-dwelling adults. Clinic offers a range of services such as comprehensive assessments for individuals in their living environments, traditional OT interventions, care transition planning. And Michelle is also an active participant in supporting women entrepreneurs, right? She's part of Accelerate Her program, which provides resources and education to women-owned startups. So Michelle, welcome to the show. It's nice to meet you. How you doing?
Thank you for having me. Good.
All right. So can you tell us, when did you decide to become an occupational therapist? And what was your inspiration, if you had any?
It was not my first choice. My first choice was to become an educator. And I went off, I was the first college student in my family. My parents did not finish 8th grade, either of them. And my father went on to serve in World War II briefly. And my mother got married and had children. So I went off to become an educator and realized it wasn't sustainable as a single woman. Most at that time, and this is a long time ago, keep in mind 1988, most educators were married and they were a second income. I believe when I did an income check, it was around $14,000 to $18,000 a year. And I went to the school counselor and they did an inventory, personality, skills, desires. And I'd never heard of occupational therapy, as most people. And it kicked out zookeeper, OT, PT, speech, believe it or not, physician, and some other things. And I looked around and I actually changed universities after my very first college semester.
Okay. Very interesting. And what university was it?
I was at Midwestern State University in Wichita Falls, Texas, and I moved to Texas Women's University right here in Denton, Texas.
Okay, great. So I'm guessing you graduated, you became an OT. What setting did you work in?
Well, that is funny because I've always worked, I've had my hand in many pots my entire career, which has spanned now 3 decades. So I had an impactful clinical rotation. We had to do 3 back then, peds, psych, and inpatient rehab or adult acute care. And I fell in love with inpatient rehab. So that was my first journey into occupational therapy. But I always moonlighted and had a side gig of home health. And my very first gig was a traveling therapist. So I had graduated and I was a traveling therapist before I was licensed. I was a temporary license living out of state.
Mm-hmm. And what state did you move to?
First was Georgia. And I had mentors, I guess, physical therapists who told me how to use traveling to see the United States on someone else's dime. So I would pick, I want to go to California. And then I would travel to California, or I want to travel to Virginia. And so I crisscrossed the United States. And it's unfortunate that at that time I lost my father and my stepmother within 6 weeks of each other. And so I moved back home to Fort Worth, and they actually gave me a traveling gig to keep me on board right in my own backyard so I could be around family and friends.
That's nice. Interesting. So you done quite a bit of traveling. When did you decide that you want to venture into business and open up your own clinic?
I love that question because it was always in me, but I got married and I had 4 daughters and I prioritized them. I didn't have parents that prioritized children when I was growing up. And so I decided that was part of the family tree I could change. So I just worked and did the W-2 for primary full-time work and then did 1099 side gigs. And I went through a divorce and remarried and inherited 2 additional bonus children. So I was quite busy. And although I always wanted to start my own business, I couldn't figure out how I could do it all. I thought someone was going to get the short end of the stick, either myself, my husband, or my children. I never really gave my patients the short end of the stick, which is crazy. I always prioritized them. So fast forward, I was working in acute care. In 2019, I had just finished my master's of healthcare leadership because I'm a bachelor's level OT. And I thought I wanted to start my own business. I needed to know, well, who would purchase my services if it was corporations or business to business or individuals. So I literally got incorporated in 2019 in like September, November, and I planned to launch. I had a logo, I had everything, rack cards, and I was launching at a senior expo in May of 2020. And of course, that did not happen. And so, fortunately, I was also a university professor, really just a lab assistant at University of St. Augustine. So I got to work in the hospital and teach online during the pandemic, all the while trying to figure out how can I get a grant? How can I start this business? And then I had my first clients late 2021 and then into 2022, a few. And then it really took off at the end of 2022.
It's really cool. And did you still have your teaching position when you started your business?
I did. And I changed. I taught several different classes. And and then I went back to school because I'm a glutton for my doctorate, my post-professional doctorate. So I started that in the pandemic in 2020 and then I graduated in 2022. So, and then I had a client and I did really, really well with that client. And that kind of sparked organic growth in the company. And almost overnight, my whole calendar was full. And I had mentioned I had to burn the boats because they didn't give me a $10,000 grant that I requested because they said essentially I wasn't serious, I guess. And so they invited me to reapply, and I reapplied, and I got the grant in 2023. Once I resigned from the 1099 and from the W-2, so I was all in. It was either make it or break it.
Wow. I would love to hear more about the grant. I would like to talk about the services. So can we talk about the services the lifestyle transition offers and the type of population you actually service? More like yeah.
I love that question because when I started this company, and I should probably add that because I had already started the company, my capstone was designed around my company, and it was a proof of concept. So I used my research in my capstone to develop a mobile Part B, outpatient occupational therapy specific, not home health, and why not home health, and to just prove it that it should be that was what fills the gap. That's what was missing. So I was silly and confused, even though I had sought out business coaching from the local SCORE and the SBDC and other entities. Plus, I was a grant recipient that required business training. I thought, man, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to slay. I'm going to do home assessments. People are going to write me checks. Medicare is going to pay. And so it's all insurance. And I'm going to tell them, thank you for your business and move on to the next one. And I was going to service as many people as I could. And every single home evaluation had a greater need of needing occupational therapy. So it wasn't just the home environment that was contributing to failure to thrive, falls. I serve a population, mostly probably 95% of Parkinson's disease and their caregivers. And the rest is pretty much pre-op ortho or other neuro conditions. And I have yet to meet a human inside their home and do the home assessment that didn't also need OT. And it ranges from 3 visits to 23 visits or more. I could keep them on a maintenance program for the rest of their God-given life. In addition to that, I do home assessment for accessibility, where there's maybe they're in the process of a remodel. They're trying to move mom home from a nursing home after a fall and a break. I do a lot of relocation. So maybe I'm thinking of a client right now who unexpectedly became widowed, and there was no one to take care of her. Her family was very active with grandchildren, so they had to move her to an independent living facility. I have another gentleman that I helped relocate, and I assess both their existing home, and then I support why relocating may be the best option, and then I go assess where they're relocating to. And I think that's a fantastic opportunity for occupational therapists because I caught a very significant oops with the salesman at the independent living facility. My client was in a power wheelchair and he was putting her in a non-accessible unit. And had I not had the clearance to go assess that unit, they would have moved her in to have to move her out and move her again. Very traumatic after losing her spouse. And so it was a really good experience.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a very interesting topic, the aging in place. And generally, do you get patients for home assessments? And then when you do an assessment, you notice that they need therapy and then you continue with occupational therapy, or your model is slightly different? How do you go?
I have a pretty steady word of mouth referral. And I also work with an organization that serves the persons with Parkinson's and their loved ones, whether it's a sport group, a boxing club, a local speech clinic that is a nonprofit, and they will fax a referral. And then I contact the client and say, hey, your speech therapist thought you could benefit from some fall prevention and home accessibility assessments. And 9 out of 10 times the wife or the spouse or the client themselves is like, where have you been all my life? And some are completely exhausted of physical therapy. And that's not a kill to PT. They've just work on their balance and they still fall. They work on their leg strength and they still fall. They work on their transfers and they still fall. And then I can enter the home. And sometimes I refer out to an accessibility contractor or remodeler, and we do a full overhaul. Sometimes they're just working as the role of a handyman, and they're because the person doesn't want to remodel because they're anticipating a move. So, and then it leads to training with equipment, DME, accessibility changes that have been made. And yes, I do traditional OT. That's I have kind of a calling card. I do a personalized home exercise program that's a photographic home program, and I leave it behind. I train the caregivers and the family members so that there's carryover with posture, with upper extremity coordination, fine motor skills, things like that.
Interesting. And Michelle, do you work with contractors and handyman? Do you have like a team? Do you refer out? Eventually, you have a few people, right? You refer out to.
I do. And I know you can often feel socially isolated as an entrepreneur, and I try to not just hang out with OTs because they're not usually the ones that are sending the referrals or that need my services. I tend to gravitate towards other and a crossbreed, I guess you could say, other professionals, because I want everybody to know the value of occupational therapy. And I lucked into, during my capstone, I had to do a business plan. And I then applied and I was accepted into a business plan competition for the city of Fort Worth. And it came with a grant. And I had to say who my competitors were. And in looking with wider eyes, my competitors were not just other occupational therapists. There were several people in the aging in place space, and many not qualified, should not have been in that space. And I still to this day agree that they should not. Just because you have a certification doesn't mean that you can consider the human. You may consider only the space. And these contractors, I always give a list of 3, and I found one as competition. And then he turned me on to the other 2 and said, hey, I want you to, so I give a list of 3. Same with wheelchair vendors. I always give a list of 3 or 4, and I work in tandem with all of them. Same with DME vendors and storefronts. So I think it's about collaborate in the community.
Very nice. Yeah, definitely. And do you also get referrals from these vendors, from these contractors or DME companies that you refer out to?
I do.
Or is it one with street as the question, really?
So yes, absolutely, 1000%. But I have to tell you, I've pumped the brakes a lot on telling people that I need business until I hire an OT assistant or 2 and another OT. I need to grow. I just am in the process now that I have a virtual assistant. I'm in the process of really establishing those operations and my SOPs just so that I can make sure it goes smoothly. I had a 1099 last year for about 4 months, and that's not the route that I want to go moving forward. I want a W-2. I want a family member, a team member on here that's not just, it's not a side gig for them, that they're equally vested.
I mean, I love the topic of 1099 versus W-2. Why do you prefer W-2 versus 1099? What did you find? What pros did you see in W-2 versus 1099 when hiring
Honestly,
there? Yeah.
okay, so in full transparency, I was the 1099 so many times. I had a W-2 job and then I always picked up a side gig. I just think I'm a different breed, maybe because I'm older and my 1099 was a new graduate and I she was just busy, right? And so I couldn't add more to her plate. So one or two covered clients didn't meet my needs. And so it was almost more work than it was value. And so I feel like moving into Q2 of this year, when I hire my first part-time to transition to full-time OTA, I think it's more of a team. And one of the other struggles is my patients, they're used to getting me and I'm the word of mouth referral, not
Yeah.
my team, because I don't have a team yet. And even just getting them to talk to my assistant was quite the hurdle because they all think they need to talk directly to me. So I have I think I'm just going to take that OT assistant with me on the evaluation and say, and this is blank, and you're going to be working with him or her moving forward. So I think it's just becoming a family and a team. That's my goal.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I hear this all the time. A healthcare provider has been treating a patient for years, sometimes even for months. They get so used to it, right? They don't want to hear any other names. They don't want to see any other people. Definitely the transition process takes some time, but it's definitely rewarding at the end. Michelle, and you said W-2. Is it a part-time W-2, right? Are you planning to hire part-time? Okay.
Yes, I am. And let me tell you something that I didn't know that existed. When I would go to, I'm very entrenched in the entrepreneurial ecosystem here in Fort Worth because when I started my business, there was no guidebook. There was I didn't learn one thing with my capstone. I didn't learn one thing with my doctorate, post-professional. I have a master's in healthcare leadership, but it's not an MBA and it wasn't in entrepreneurialism. So if I could rewind and go back, I probably would have taken that route, but I can't. So I learned a lot the hard way. And that's probably why it's taken me a few years to just feel more confident to hire. But I didn't know there were professionals out there, fractional HR professionals. So I have that in my back pocket now. So she took a policy and procedure manual that may have been for a different state, whether it was North Carolina, North Dakota, Minnesota, and she made it a Texas policy and procedure manual so that I'm legit and everything's correct and compliant in Texas. And she is fantastic. She helped me with job description. She's going to post the job. She's going to interview them. And then she's going to help me with setting up Gusto and payroll so that I just can't juggle all of those balls.
Yes. Yeah. No. That's great. That's interesting. You mentioning this because HR, when you're starting out, right, when you're a solo entrepreneur, I think hiring and onboarding is very, very time consuming, right, and it could be very scary. A lot of people sometimes it's hard to find staff because you might not offer the right benefits that your competitors or large organization might. So definitely having somebody from HR fractionally, I think could be a big help. And you also mentioned SOP. When you said SOP, was that related to policies, procedures, or SOP for operations?
For operations, what I'm finding is even after training and onboarding a virtual assistant, it's really hard, right, as a business owner to turn things over because I've made enough mistakes myself. So then when I'm paying someone, I just want to know that I train them how to do it and don't do the same mistakes I made. And just this week, I'm like, hey, didn't we have an SOP on that? And then I realized it would have been so helpful to have an actual picture of an HMO insurance card,
Yeah.
a Medicare insurance card, a PPO insurance card, and then the blurb that is just an automatic standard operating procedure that says we no longer take HMO. We're happy to give you a super bill. And so I'm just trying to refine that because when I add stuff, because I don't market and I already have a wait list of 20 to 28 people. And when I add staff, they're already going to be full. And then I want to add, but I don't want a huge agency. So I just got to know that it runs smoothly before, or I'll lose that staff.
Yeah.
And I'll lose the clients if there are that many kinks in the system.
Yeah. I mean, I love SOPs in general, like the standard operating procedures. Some of you don't know what SOP stands for, but I think it's extremely important because a lot of therapists, they start out, they're not worried about SOPs. They're worried about getting it right, making sure they're not making mistakes. And once they learn to move on to resolving another issue that might come up, and they completely forget about writing things down, right? Standardizing the process. And what happens when you hire, right, and you scale, and sometimes you have a high turnover for your front office staff, right, for your assistants, you name it, even for therapists, those things happen sometimes every quarter, right? Until you find the right person. So the training could be definitely minimized if you have the right SOPs in place. So, and I recommend starting it early. Even when you're learning, you learn something, you write it down. Having now ChatGPT or other AI products, that could be done honestly within 5 minutes once you have at least a draft of it, right? So I'm really happy that you actually utilizing SOPs. That's really exciting. And like I said, I'm a big proponent of that. And Michelle, so currently, which EMR you use?
What EMR? I use yours. I
How about-
don't know, but it wasn't my first.
It wasn't your first. Okay. What did you use first, actually?
Okay, that's an excellent point, and I hope your audience listens to this with wide open ears, because back in 2019, I was doing all the things and laying it all forward. So I didn't even have a patient, but boy, I had an EHR, and it was Advanced MD, because I wanted to be so above board, and I wanted to be able to communicate with physician offices, because I really thought I was just going to go market to podiatrists, orthopedists, neurologists, low vision specialists, and everybody was going to have me do their pre-op home assessments, training equipment for the best outcomes. And the pandemic happened, and I did lots of research and comparison charts, and I really thought, this is the one for me. It was like $319 a month. I didn't even have one client. So we were just covering that. And the pandemic hit, and because I didn't know what you don't know what you don't know as a new entrepreneur. I didn't know I could just cancel the contract. So I kept paying, and I kept developing my own evaluations. They only had a few therapists on board, but they were pediatric therapists, and most were PTs. And they wanted to just duplicate and said, just use those evals. I'm like, that's not my lane. My jam is home assessments. My jam is I'm an OT for the elder adult. And so I wasted 10 months at $319. And then I moved to Simple Practice. And Simple Practice served a need, and it helped me simplify it was truly simple. However, again, it was geared towards mental health professionals, and there were PTs and OTs on there, but there was no real document system for me. And then I had a biller at that time who very much liked Hello Note. And so I said, okay, I'll try it. And then I did fall in love with Hello Note. So I beat the drum. I tell other people about Hello Note. I've recruited a new user, and I very much like Hello Note.
Okay. Thank you for sharing your journey, your EMR journey, and telling us a little bit of other systems that you've used. And Michelle, so we talked about marketing that you don't have any really. So you never marketed when you started, or you actually did market in the beginning, and then because you actually had a lot of word of mouth, you stopped marketing?
So, okay, so I'll tell you about my marketing. Remember, I was a lab assistant at University of St. Augustine.
Yeah.
And the physical therapy department was putting on a senior fair, and it was all physical therapy. And I happen to own my own business, and I have everything, because remember, I was going to launch at a senior fair, the pandemic. So I had the table skirt, I have the backdrop, I had the signage, I had the rack cards, and I said, hey, how about an OT talks about home safety and independence with ADLs? Can I have a booth there? And of course, we all talked together, and Kaylee was like, sure, come on. So I got to mix and mingle with the PT business owners and PT instructors, and one business owner there, his name's Dr. Mike. He now teaches at Texas Women's University, and he closed his clinic. But he said, you know what? Can I put some of your rack cards at my business? And I'm like, please, I'll drive out there. And I drove out there, and I took him some business cards and rack cards. And that's how I got the first patient that led then to all the other patients. And then I have been at a senior fair. So I did invest in getting out in front of my patient population. And I did get clients. So if the senior fair cost $325 to be at, I easily had probably 5 clients from there. But most importantly, I volunteered at the next one, so I didn't have to pay. And then I could just speak business to business owner. And then so it was just like, again, word of mouth, just, hey. And I practice from the mindset of give before you get, and give freely and give often. And unfortunately, the more you give, the less you're documenting, you're seeing your own clients, you're doing all the work of learning the ins and outs of reports on an EMR. But those relationships, they always come back to benefit you. And I've built a relationship with Adult Protective Services, with the local community college where I give free classes one time. They want me to do a series of 10. And I said, I'm not retired. No. I'm a senior and I can take classes there, but no, I can't do that. And so I do one a semester, and then I do local church senior groups. And I mix and mingle with people who serve my tribe. Because that's where my heart is better outcomes.
Yeah.
So that's it. And I've ever paid for an ad. I've never, that's the extent of marketing.
Thank you for sharing that. I agree. So it's some people look for instant gratification, right? Like paid ads, I would consider that, right? Because you pay for an ad, you get a lead, right? And then there's certain things that you have to really invest in, so, right? Like community outings, full prevention programs, talking and educating seniors. These are long-term investments. That's the way I look at them, right? And sometimes they pay out later, and it could take a long time, but they do work. Michelle, so now that you have a wait list for your patients, you see patients 5 days a week, or how do you separate patient care from practice management?
Oh, I love this question. I hate this question. So I'm not good at it, and I'm still learning. And there is, you know what? I'm transparent if nothing else, because I hope it helps someone else. So initially, because I felt drawn to help the most people that I could, I filled up my schedule, and it took a mentor. I mentioned I won a grant, and it took that mentor to look at my calendar, and she said, Michelle, all you're doing is seeing a client and driving to the next client, and then you drive to the next client. How could you ever get your documentation done? And I said, I don't know, because I'm answering the phone in the car while I'm driving, and I'm trying to take notes. And it was because Texas is big, and I also, when someone sends me a client, they're not sending me a client because they don't have a need. They're sending me a client because they may have fallen and broken their neck, or they fell down backwards down the stairs, or they slipped in the shower. All the referrals seemed urgent. And especially when they came from a doctor's office. And so I struggled. So I hired a virtual assistant finally, and that was very hard because it's not a revenue generating therapist. And I thought, well, cool, I'm going to hire this part-time employee, and that's going to free up all this time. And then you have to train that individual, plus still see your clients. So I was working 7 days a week for the longest time. I would try to document and catch up and batch on the weekends, and then schedule on a Sunday evening. I never had boundaries. My clients had they would text when they were in a bind. I was just always available. So fast forward to 2025, and now I have carved out. The only reason I'm doing this today is because I have an admin day on Friday. On Wednesday, I have a business to business appointment every Wednesday morning. And then after that, I've cleared my schedule for admin. I have joined a co-working space. That's where I am right now. And I just joined today, who have multiple offices, because the co-working space, I cut my teeth on getting my master's and my doctorate. They have one location. So I was always driving out of my way to go there to get away from the home office, because I still have a young adult at home, my mother-in-law's at home, and my husband's at home, and my dog's at home. And so I'm just now learning. So I can tell you this, I also say no a lot more. I've also learned to not, like right now, I have a current total patient list that I see of 16 to 19, and I have shifted some to every other week. I have dedicated evaluation days. I'm moving towards a solutions-based offer where I can meet a need that's not billed to insurance, because that's really where my heart is in the community, delivery of services. And so I'm a work in progress. And I have been coached a lot. And until you walk a day in my shoes, you really just don't know what the home life demands are and the other demands. And so there's no prescriptive that says, let's just block your schedule. And like Monday, my assistant was out. Her mother was ill. So guess who was answering the phones, dealing with insurance and scheduling? And that was a treatment day. And so every day's a new day. There's no 2 days alike.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know the feeling, trust me. Definitely juggling so many different things and going, to patients' homes, and especially, when you have just one front office staff, right, your assistant, and when they out, it's a disaster. I know it just cripples your whole business for that time being, right? And Michelle, so, do you utilize templates? And you said you have time when once a week when you document. Do you I feel like evaluation generally take the most time. And do you not document a point of service?
Okay, so I love that discussion, and I'm going to relate that to my time at inpatient rehab with a national company who told me during an evaluation I should have taken my rolling computer into the bathroom while the patient was showering to do point of service. And that was a patient who was a dependent transfer. And I try. I do. I started now. I'm much better. And yes, I have a template that I created my own. I don't know yet how to get templates from other therapists to make my work lighter, because I'm sure, this is not Hello Notes first rodeo. I'm sure there's a bank of many templates that I could tap into. But I've created some, and then I'm also fortunately using some AI and a scribe. And that has been a game changer. And wow, it was capturing the things that I did that I had forgotten that I did during a visit, and then I can write the note much more efficiently. And so I lived in.
All right, which scribe do you use?
Well, I mentioned that I had been coached, and so I went with what that coach had recommended at a time, and I got a discount, and it used to be a Thales scribe, and it was difficult. It was difficult. It was a very bumpy road, and they tried. They were so kind. And I spoke with Steve Gluck, and he told me, well, hey, how about Hippo? And I had, I'm in a bunch of entrepreneurial Facebook groups, and I'd heard of Hippo, but I couldn't add one. I'm not a techie. My husband's an IT director, and I'm like, that's like me with my finger at my nose. I don't understand it. I don't get it. I should have got a degree in programming, but now Hippo is really magical. It really is magical. It's affordable. And I had used, there's another one that's just free on your phone. I tried it. I forgot that I had it. So I'm just always recreating a wheel, making a better version of myself. And
Okay, so hit right.
yeah, and I'm good. That's what I did and passed the audit. So Hello Note held tight for that. And that made me super happy that all my ducks were in a row. And I'm always able to give feedback and say, oh, it would have been nice, and this would have been so much easier if A, B, C, or D. And it's your customer service team is fantastic.
Thank you.
I'm on a first name basis with Joseph and Gab, where.
So that's like it's the music to my ears every time I hear praises about Hello Note. And yes, Medicare audits is one thing that everybody's concerned about, and we've been getting a lot of feedback that a lot of our clients get audited recently, and everybody passed audits. Everybody I've spoken to passed audits with flying colors. And honestly, this is exciting to hear, because when usually, therapists starting out and one thing like, oh, I don't want to take insurance. Medicare is scary because they always do these insurance audits. And, when you have the processes in place, you have the right documentation system, especially, with Medicare compliant, I think it helps. It takes that, that work, that the scary part out of your formula, so to speak, right? Michelle, so you mentioned you have a mentor, right? It's a business coach or a mentor?
So I mentioned that we have a really rich ecosystem for entrepreneurialism here, from everything. And I dropped in the previous chat, I hope you grabbed it, a guide to starting your business in Texas as an occupational therapy practitioner that a student, capstone student of mine last fall created. And there was no guide like that when I started my business. And so I have multiple mentors, and they're not necessarily occupational therapists who have gone there before me. when I was first starting out, I don't know if you know Melissa Lapointe up in Canada, but she does OT's Gone Rogue, or she had OT's Gone Rogue. And I had joined her very affordable system, and I gained tons of information. And then when I applied and I won a grant, I was assigned to a business mentor, and then reassigned. And she's just bad to the bone. And her niche, it's not healthcare, it's marketing. And so she gets to look at my business with a different set of lenses, right? And she's the one that's like, well, no wonder you're behind in your documentation. All you do is drive and see clients, and then you're exhausted. And so it really took an outside. I could have told you that if I looked at your calendar, but I couldn't see it myself. And so that's been valuable. And then I had a mentor through the Small Business Development Center, and she helped me with my business plan. I had entered a business plan competition. And I see opportunities to just get in front of more people, right? And so my pitch, do you think I didn't educate people about occupational therapy and the value? Well, heck yes, I did. And about the value for preventing falls and preventing unplanned hospitalizations. So I just believe you'll never know if you don't try. Apply. And so I have a life coach also, because in case you can't tell, I have ADHD. And that is something that people need to know about themselves starting a business. That it's hard. I mean, it is completely different than if you don't have ADHD and you're starting a business. And so I'm blessed. I entered a contest, and I was accepted into an accelerator program in January of 2023 through the Center for Women Entrepreneurs here in Texas, which happens to be officed out of Texas Women's University. It's not sponsored by TWU, but it's officed and supported there. And I was the lowest entrepreneur on the totem pole in that group out of 6 women. Some had, they were manufacturing clothes, for God's sake. Others had owned a yoga studio, dance studio for years. And so I kind of learned based on what they said their mistakes had been in business. But
Okay.
well,
Interesting. And so that grant you apply for, they offered you a business coach as part of the grant?
required. It was required. Oh, yes. They weren't going to give money and then have you lose it. So it was.
You were,
That had
sorry, but just to confirm, so you were required to pay for the business coach as well out of your own pocket? Oh, that's part. Nice.
It was yeah, and required reading. We had a required book club. It was The Pumpkin Plan. And that was, I don't know if you're familiar with, I think it's Mike McAlowich, but he wrote Profit First and then the Pumpkin Plan. And it's about, it is fantastic. If you can tolerate reading foul language, he's the author for you, but he gets his point across.
Yeah, I definitely heard of Profit First. I personally did not read that book, but I know it's a very popular book among entrepreneurs. And I know I didn't know some of the topics they discuss, right? When you're starting a business, you're like, oh, I'll pay myself last because I just want to make sure the payrolls and that and everything like that. So that's the biggest. I know I hear this all the time from business owners, and I know when they read that book, it kind of changes their whole life. You know, they're just a business.
It did.
Michelle, I also, I know we have limited time left. I would like to talk about other healthcare providers, physical therapists. You mentioned speech language pathologists, medical doctors. So do you collaborate with them? I know you mentioned those an initial patient that came through the door from the physical therapist. What about other healthcare providers? Do you network with these a lot? Do they refer patients to you and vice versa? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I don't know who the general population is that will see this podcast or listen to it, but in North Texas, we're very rich in the medical community in both Fort Worth and Dallas and Arlington. And by going where other healthcare professionals are, you just meet natural collaborators to better each other's clients. And since we've been on this podcast, I've received a few texts from physical therapists who send me clients and I send them back to them. They're also mobile outpatient. I'm very active in the Parkinson's community. And so I work with neurologists and physician assistants. I work with neuropsychologists who are like, hey, I think this person's going into PSP or has PSP or has, cognitive Lewy body. Can you help the caregiver? And absolutely, I can safe proof that home and make it better for them. I mentioned Adult Protective Services, and they work with trauma coordinators. I'm going to be doing a car fit event, and I'll be working with local hospital trauma coordinators. I actually went to the table with the trauma director, a surgeon at a local hospital, and I got to tell him all about the wonderful things of occupational therapy and preventing that revolving door of they don't have a broken bone, so they just send them home, and then they fall again, and then they come again. And it's just wonderful to have, again, give more than you expect to receive, and it will come back to you.
Yeah, I agree. I think networking with healthcare professionals and other professionals within the specific, specialty or just field of therapy, I think it's important. Absolutely. And I'm a big believer in, especially for geriatric population, to network with medical doctors, because a lot of elderly, they don't go online, right? They don't surf the internet. They listen to their doctors, and having the right resources, just to refer your patient to the right resources. I think it's also extremely important. Michelle, and my last question for you, for those clinicians that are starting out or considering to start their practice, what advice do you have for them?
Well, I want you to know you're stepping on my soapbox there. Um, there's several things I want to tell that person, because I think of me a couple of years ago. The first thing is, know your demographic and what their needs are versus what you think you're the best at, because nobody really cares. Nobody really cares that I have a doctorate. They could care less. They don't care anything about my previous work history. They just want to know, do I get their need and how can I help them? So I would spend less time getting certificates. Like, I'm a CAPS certified therapist, and it has helped, but not that much. The second point is, look at your local ecosystem for entrepreneurism. You don't have to go pay thousands of dollars for coaching because they started their business. You can just start. There's this guide. I gave you access to the guide. It's not only at the TOTA or Texas OTA website, it's at the University, Abilene Christian University's Digital Commons. It's also with OT Potential, and it's a fantastic starting point. It was designed for Texas-based OT students, new grads, experienced therapists that are just entertaining the idea of a private practice, whether it's brick and mortar or a mobile concierge. The third point is just slow down, because I just went full force, and kind of like what I do everything. I juggled all the balls. I was working in the hospital. I was getting a master's degree and then a doctorate. I'd started my business. I couldn't figure out how to close the revenue cycle. I didn't understand billing Medicare and Medicaid. So then I paid money to hire a biller. That backfired. And then, so that would be pump the brakes and just really try to find out what you don't know versus your strength. My strength is I'm a great therapist, and I'm not being conceited. I'm really a great therapist, and it can bury you, because you can be a great therapist and a horrible business owner and, or administrator. And then my fourth point is, avoid the temptation of all the Facebook ads. They come at you. I can tell you that in my feed alone, I get at least 6, 7, 8 a day from some of the exact same therapy coaching who want to expand and grow my business, who want to tell me how to do it. And once you get into a coaching program, you're already drowning usually, because you're already juggling so many balls. You're probably already working. You have productivity management or productivity expectations at your full-time job. You might have a side job. You're entertaining starting your own business, and then you join a coaching program, and it's like drinking from a fire hose. They want to teach you everything all at once. And if you can't digest it and you have to exit that program, well, the knowledge is trapped behind that paywall. And so it's hard. It's really hard. And I just say, pull together your resources, whether it's human capital. I could never have done this without my husband. I still have one 21-year-old at home. We take care of our 81-year-old, my mother-in-law. And had he not had a full-time job that kind of floated, I told you I spent $319 on an EMR I wasn't even using because of the pandemic. That was hard. Paying money for coaching was hard. Taking the time to attend networking events is time away from your family. That's hard. So you have to pull those resources and surround yourself with people that, one, believe in you and your vision. And I just don't underestimate yourself. You can do it. And there are people like you. There are people that, like Steve, that went out and expanded and started a software company or an electronic health record, I think that building that community is valuable. And take your time. That's my 4 tidbits there. And thank you for asking.
Yeah, I think that's a great advice. I personally, I agree, kind of, getting your resources together, understanding what you have available. And I believe in mentors, right? Having a mentor that maybe done something similar in the past, just reaching out to them. And it doesn't matter in what industry. It doesn't have to be physical, occupational, speech therapy. If you're starting a grocery store or something, having a mentor that's not done a business and just talking to them and understanding what kind of hurdles you might have down the line and making sure you're prepared for them. You could never be prepared for everything, obviously, right? But I think just what to expect and understand if you're even ready for this. I think this is great advice, Michelle. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you joining us on the show today. I was really, it was great meeting you and talking to you and learning about your journey. I would love to be in touch and talking to you in a few years to see where you are.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a beautiful day.